at a situation like this. Now, when you put, as I said, Operation Sindoor in this context, how do you view that particular operation? And what are your
Look,
views about its successes and whatever it achieved?
Operation Sindoor was important. And the reason why it was important is it did not simply occur in a moment of time. Too often in the West, we look at history in snippets of 4 years, especially in Washington, D.C. We think that we can start over with every new president. We don't understand that there has been cross-border attacks from Punjab, cross-border attacks into Kashmir from across the line of control for quite some time. We don't understand, we don't remember what happened in 2008 with Mumbai. The fact of the matter is that it's not enough to simply say, Pakistan, don't do this. How could you do this for the first time? Because this is now a repeated instance where Pakistan will try to create terror inside India, inside Kashmir, for two reasons. Number one is to distract the Pakistani public from Pakistan's own failures. Now, a couple years ago, I was able to go to Kashmir, to visit Sindoor, to go to other places in Kashmir as well. When I went to Kashmir a few years ago, what I saw was that Kashmir was thriving. And I had been a year or two previous to that in Islamabad in Pakistan after Article 370. And in Pakistan, there were actually billboards counting the amount of time since 370 had happened and depicting it as a travesty. But when I was in Sindoor, when I was elsewhere in Kashmir, what I saw was society reborn. People no longer had to deal with wildcat strikes that if they didn't follow, there would be threats of violence. They didn't have to deal with artificial Islamism, or if I can say, an old feudal elite trying to suffocate society. They could join India, they could take their exams without fear of the schools being closed and retake their place in society. You could go to cinemas, which you couldn't have done for the previous decades because of both Islamism and violence. You had people returning to Kashmir who had been expelled based on their religion. In fact, basically you had full integration as a union territory. It's not the outcome which Pakistan wanted or expected, which is why Pakistan had those obnoxious billboards in Islamabad depicting Kashmir as a prison. The fact of the matter is there's only one prison in Kashmir, and that's in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, where the people are treated as prisoners, where if you're from Gilgit and you start speaking about your sovereignty and the law, you're going to be tossed in prison because Pakistan wants to embezzle this aid money from China, and they don't want the Gilgitis getting in the way. That's one reason why Pakistan sponsors terror. The other reason, as I said before, was simply more broadly to distract Pakistanis from Pakistan's own failures as a country. It's important to recognize, therefore, that what we see in Pakistan is part of a problem, and it's an escalating problem. If you don't draw a red line and show that you mean it, what you're doing is you're condemning future generations of Kashmiris and more broadly Indians to greater and greater terrorist attacks. The Israelis made a mistake prior to the October 7th, 2023 attacks. Their mistake was to believe that every so often when they faced terrorism coming from the Gaza Strip, that they could simply hit a bomb-making factory or take out a terror cell and kick the can down the road. When you kick the can down the road, you have to make sure that you're not heading into a dead end, because ultimately you're simply allowing the terrorists to regroup. Terrorists are creative. They understand how they will dedicate their lives to avoiding the security and the defenses of their target. And eventually, if you keep allowing them to strike, they're going to strike hard and they're going to hit harder than Indians can live with. The fact of the matter is, if Prime Minister Modi, and for that matter, if the Prime Minister, if the political opposition, which rallied around him in the nationalist cause, hadn't stood in solidarity and said no more terrorism, we're going to hold you accountable, you can guarantee there would have been a dozen more Mumbais, 2008s. There would have been a dozen more Pahalgams. The Pakistanis need to understand that every time an Indian dies in a terrorist attack, you're going to have senior Pakistani officials who are going to meet the same fate, and you're going to have Pakistani airfields which aren't going to be able to fly helicopters, let alone jet fighters.
So is this how you would evaluate Operation Sindoor, that it was success on India's part to have hammered Pakistani military installations, particularly their air bases and airstrips? As you said, you cannot fly a helicopter from there. I mean, forget about the jets.
Yes, it was an absolute success. But let me make it clear. Operation Sindoor was very, very calibrated. And Pakistan, it was Pakistan's decision that led to the loss of Pakistan's air bases, that led to the loss of 20% of Pakistan's air force.